Morning, boys. We're moving on with My Sister Lives on a Mantelpiece. We're going to do chapter 17, 18, and chapter 19 today. Please have your notebooks ready because you're going to take down some notes, some important things for us to discuss. And of course, at the end of the video, we are going to just discuss some of the things that came up in the chapter. So in chapter 17, remember there was that huge bomb that dropped in the chapter before where 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 dad finally found out Sunya's Muslim, and then he had that huge uproar in the classroom, and so now the truth is out. I can only imagine, like I'm black, and so I've been discriminated against because I'm black before, and it's really really scary to have someone speak to you in that manner, speak to you like you're nobody. So I can imagine that Sunya's mother and Sunya herself may have been really really scared from that encounter with dad, even though we as the readers sort of understand where dad is coming from, that his daughter died in a bombing. But of course, just because it was Muslims who confessed to it doesn't mean that these Muslims are responsible for it. But it must have been very very scary to have this big man shouting and saying all these dodgy things like I can do whatever I want in my country, even though Sunya was actually born in England. So it must have been a very, very scary experience for her. So we sort of understand in the next chapter why Sunya refuses to speak to him. She still refuses to speak to Jamie. And also she just found out that everything that she thought she knew about him wasn't true. So she's also just found out that Rose died, and all of those stories that he was making up and writing, like they weren't true, like to a huge extent, like they were complete lies. So I guess Sunya is still processing all of that. I want us to read from the novel, from page 154. We're going to take a section for us to read, and then I'm going to give you some things that you need to that you need to write down as important. Okay, so page 154, the top of the page. And Jamie says, "We haven't spoken since parents' evening, and she won't use my special pencils anymore. There's so much I want to tell her about Britain's biggest talent show, and our plan to send a letter to Mom and leave a note for Dad to tell them to come to Manchester Palace Theatre on January 5th. I want to sing her our song and show her our dance moves and tell her that they will solve everything. When Mum's back and Dad stop drinking and they've forgotten all about Rose, Dad'll be too happy to hate Sunya. We might not like He might not like us being friends, but Mum will say, just leave them alone, and Sunya will come around for tea. We will eat tropical pizza, and they will forget that she's a Muslim." So I thought that this piece was quite interesting to read, that Jamie, even at this point, after everything that has gone wrong, he's still so hopeful that everything is going to be fixed just like that. And for me, that just shows how young Jamie is and how naive Jamie is. Again, I think I've used that word already, that like he believes so easily and he thinks that things will go back to normal so easily. And I even think about, like, don't you guys think that when we first went into 21 days of lockdown, I even thought it's just going to be 21 days, and then after 21 days, everything will go back to normal. I even somewhere in the back of our mind thought that after 21 days, the virus will be gone. There'll be no virus, and everything's going to be fine. Everything's just going to go back to normal. And now look at us. It's been over 100 days. Second ban on alcohol. So like things have unfolded so completely differently to what we had hoped. And Jamie's the same. Jamie's very, like, he just hopes for the best. But I think sometimes we are naive, just like I was naive about the lockdown. We are naive because we really, really, really want the good outcome to happen. So Jamie really desperately wants his mother to come back. He desperately wants his father to stop drinking. He desperately wants his family to be back to normal. He desperately wants to be friends with Sunya again. He wants everything to go back to normal and everything to be fine again. And so when we so desperately want that, that's what we hope for. That's what we hope for so, so badly, because that's what we want to happen. And I could really relate to that side of Jamie. Okay. It's a very, very childlike belief, and even Jazz has bought into it because she's agreed to enter into this competition, and even Jazz is hoping maybe Mom will come and maybe everything will be fixed and everything will go back to normal, everything will be fine. But it also just shows that even though Jazz is so much more mature than Jamie, she also is just a child who just wants her family back to normal and everything to be okay. Um, Jamie talks about in the same chapter on page 155 in the next page towards the top. He says, I keep imagining a fat parcel on the mat by the front door, but every time I think of the card with Happy Christmas Son in big blue letters, I get that weird flicker of something that scares me. It never really goes away now. And I think after Mom didn't show up to the parents' meeting, Jamie's starting to realize that, hey, Mom may never come back. Like he's starting to realize it, and so it gives him this knot in his stomach, which is anxiety. It's an anxious feeling. I think that Jamie's starting to realize that nothing is going to go back to normal. That's what he's desperately hoping for, that things will go back to normal. But he's realizing, like very slowly, that things are not going to go back to normal, which is really, really sad. Okay. Um, Also, at the end of this chapter, though, the nice thing at the end of this chapter, it seems that Jamie and Sunya sort of make up. He chases her after class, and she seems to like. It seems like they will make up and they will end up being friends again. It seems like it at the end of this chapter. Okay. So then that chapter comes to an end. And then we get to chapter 18. This is now the day of the competition and they get to the theater. And again, it feels to me that ever since we realized that Mom wasn't coming at parents' meeting, and when Dad realized that Sunya's Muslim, that for me, from there, that was a climax. And it's still a climax now because they still have to go to the theater to perform and they still have to find out if Mom, they still don't know the truth about Mom yet. And Jamie still doesn't know about the shirt yet. You know what I mean? So we're still at like the build up where all these truths are coming out. Okay. I want to go to page 171. Yeah, 171. They're at the theater now. They've been given the number, which number they are going to be, and I have something on my mouth. Okay. So on page 171, we finally see. So in this entire novel, Jazz has been the adult in the house. So she cooks. When Jamie got into trouble, she phoned and she pretended that she was the parent. She forges letters for herself. She's sort of like the mature one out of everyone. And this is the first time in this chapter where we see Jasmine being vulnerable, and we see Jasmine being scared and being worried. We see Jasmine being hopeful as well. So actually, when she entered this competition, she was also hoping that Mom would come and watch, and she was also hoping that Mom would come back and everything would just go back to normal. So you can see that Jazz, even though she fronts and she acts like she's all mature and she knows what she's doing, she's still very much a child as well. Page 171, sort of from the middle of the page. I couldn't let her leave. Oh, at this point, Jazz is like, she can't do this. She's getting so nervous and she's too scared. She doesn't want to do this anymore. And Jamie's gonna try and convince her not to leave. So he says, I couldn't let her leave. Think about Mom, I shouted. Think about Dad and Leo. She pushed open the door and icy air gushed in, but Jazz didn't walk out. I ran up to her and grabbed her hand. Do you really think they're watching? She whispered. Can you see, like that hope, like she desperately wants her parents to get back together and for things to go back to normal. Do you really think she's watching? Where did I leave? Yes, I replied. Leo dropped us off and he promised that. She shook her head. Not Leo, she said, biting her lip too hard. A tiny spot of blood trickled out of her cut. She dabbed it with her finger. She'd even taken the black polish off her nails and had painted them pale pink. So the black nails and like the funny hairstyle and whatever was a way of rebelling. So if she painted her nails back to a pink, is like she's conforming to what is normal, Why? So she can get acceptance. It's all ways to get acceptance. So even Jazz is trying to do what she thinks she needs to do in order for her mother to notice her, in order for her mother to go, I love you, I'm coming back. We can get back together, we can be a family again. Okay. So she had even painted her nails. Mom, that flicker came back again, stronger than ever before. And for the first time, I knew exactly what it was. Doubt. If envy is red, then doubt is black. And the room went all dark, and it was the opposite of the egg yolk car. Everything, everything looked ugly, and everything felt hopeless. I thought about my birthday and the PS and parents' evening, but I nodded and said, she's here. Okay. Um, supposed to read further. She didn't come for Christmas, Jazz said in the tiniest voice I'd ever heard her use. A tear dripped down her cheek as the music for Michael Jackson's Thriller started on stage. No, I said, my insides in a knot, that anxiety, that realization. Um, but she probably thought that she wasn't invited. Jazz looked at me with watery eyes. I invited her, she whispered, and the knot got tighter. I remembered how Jazz had kept glancing out of the window on Christmas Day. I sent her a card and asked her to come and cook the turkey. She was crying hard now, and it was difficult to hear what she was saying, and it was difficult to concentrate because my tummy ached so badly. And I wrote to her before that, all about Dad and how we needed help because he drinks too much and doesn't look after us properly. But she didn't come, Jamie. She abandoned us. So now we experience this hope for mom to come back. We experience it from Jazz's perspective. So it's not just Jamie who was hoping, who kept on looking out the window, who kept waiting for presents and kept on waiting for letters and kept on waiting for mom to come to parents' evening. Jazz was also carrying those same hopes. And she confesses it here when she says she wrote the card and she asked her to come. And even she kept looking out the window, the way Jamie did. Even she kept looking out the window hoping that mom would come, or maybe this time she would actually come. Okay. Um, and so she bursts out and she says this. Um, and Jamie, of course, we see Jamie's in denial. Hey, he still doesn't want to admit. He still doesn't want to face the truth that mom may not be there and mom may not ever come back. And he shouts and he screams, says, "Mom loves us. Mom loves us." He's in like complete denial. I want to read. Oh, listen to this. Oh, I thought this was so sad. So Jamie keeps going, "Mom loves us, mom loves us." We're on page 173, and towards the top of the page. "She doesn't, Jamie," she replied, her voice all strangled, tears dripping off her chin. "How can she? She walked out on us, on my birthday." See, the parents were so fixated on the fact that it was Rose's birthday that they forgot that it was also Jazz's birthday. So mom leaving on that day, she wasn't abandoning Rose because Rose has died. She was abandoning Jazz, who was still alive, on her birthday. So no one bothered to try and make it special for Jazz. Um, they hurt her. So just to understand her pain. Okay. So then in this chapter they decide to go up anyway, and so they go and they sing, and Jazz says, "I'm actually doing this for you. I'm only doing this for you." Okay. And in chapter 19, we actually see that mom actually did come to watch. But of course, they read this all the wrong way. They read it completely the wrong way. I want us to go to page 185. So obviously, the whole point of them entering this competition was so that mom would come. And if mom would come, then the parents would get back together and then they would live happily ever after. Easy, right? So they realized that mom did come, actually. And so obviously Jamie's thinking, so our parents are getting back together and then that's going to be it and that's going to be it and we're going to live happily ever after. The next bomb comes. This is why I'm saying that I feel like in this chapter we're still in the climax of the story, because this is where all the truths are coming out, all the truth bombs are coming out and all the shocks are coming out. So I want to go to page 185. So Jamie's so excited. Just I'm just skimming over 184. Jamie's so excited that he thinks that his mother's talking to him, and he's thinking of all the things that he wants to say to her because he's so excited because she's finally here. He's been waiting for this for days, for months. Okay, 185, middle of the page. Dad got the keys out of his pocket. He rattled them in his hand. Ready? He asked Jazz. She nodded. Jamie, he said, and I grinned. This was the bit I'd been looking forward to. I was just wondering if Mom would ring Nigel and tell him it was over and call him a bastard when she said, I guess I'll see you all soon. I thought she meant back at the cottage because she had to drive. So I said, I'll come with you. Jazz's shoulders shot up to her ears as if she'd just seen a dog run into the road and she couldn't do a thing to stop it getting hurt. Dad went pale and closed his eyes. Mom rubbed her nose. I didn't understand why everyone was acting strange. I'll show you the way, I said, and she asked, back to London? And then I understood. So then he realizes Mom's not coming home. Okay. But do you see what I'm talking about the climax? Like, you realize things in bits and pieces slowly. You don't realize everything all at once. He realizes this slowly, and it must be even harder to realize this thing in bits and pieces. Yes, Mom is back, but Mom just came for the show. She's not actually coming back. I actually call this chapter The Realization. Okay. Just page over to page 186, towards the bottom of the page. And then all of a sudden, I was chasing after her, dodging past dancers and singers and hundreds of happy faces, all red in the cold. Mom, I yelled at the top of my voice. Mom! She turned around. What is it, sweetheart? She asked, and I wanted to shout, don't call me that, but I had more important things to say. Let's go on to page 187. He says, what is it? Mom said again. I didn't want to ask the question. I was scared of the answer. When you don't want to ask a question, you usually often know the answer, but you don't want to hear it, like it's too scary to hear. Okay. But I thought of Jazz and the words of the chorus and forced myself to be brave. Are you working tomorrow? I panted. You see that die-hard, he doesn't really want to, like, he's realized that Mom is not coming back. It hasn't quite hit home yet that Mom is not coming back at all. So he hasn't quite given up. So he says, are you working tomorrow? Mom looked confused. She pulled her coat around her. Why? She said, as if she was worried that I was going to ask her to stay longer. Just want to know, I breathed. She shook her head. No, I stopped teaching months ago. Everything started to spin. I thought of a globe in a metal holder, a hand whirling it round and round. So you don't work for Mr. Walker? I asked, giving her a chance to change her answer, hating the way my heart pounded in my chest with the very last bit of hope. Mom shook her head again. No, she said. I don't have a job. I've been away, traveling. Nigel had to do some research for his book in Egypt, and I went with him. I only got back on New Year's Eve. Well, that explained the tan. And then she shows him the letters that she got. Mom opened her bag one more time. She took out 4 envelopes, 2 with my writing on the front, 2 with Jazz's. I didn't get them in time, she said quietly, as if she was apologizing, as if she wanted to say it was okay to miss parents' evening and fine to miss Christmas. I would have come, she said. I don't know if she was telling the truth. I had one more question, and this one was even more difficult to ask. Listen to this build up, this climax. Because he's realizing all these things that he had hoped for, and they're not turning out the way that he wanted. So now the final straw is obviously the t-shirt, right? The world spun faster, cars and people and buildings, a dizzy blur around me and Mom. The t-shirt, I began, my eyes on a puddle on the pavement. You see, he's not looking straight at her, so he kind of knows at this point. Oh yes, Mom said. I meant to say, she smiled. It's brilliant. And I smiled back, despite everything. She rubbed the material between her thumb and finger. It's a lovely top. Where did you get it from? It really does suit you, James. So we find out in this chapter that this t-shirt, the Superman t-shirt that Jamie has been wearing since his birthday, did not come from his mom. Um, so yeah, so I think from this point onwards, it starts being the falling action because all the big truths are out now. The huge truths are out. And the big hurtful things are out, that he realized that his mom, that he's been hoping for the entire novel, was away on holiday and just didn't get his letters and just doesn't care about him as much as he thought. So I want you so you're gonna watch this video, you're gonna take notes, and then we're just gonna have a brief discussion at the end of the period, just discussing like the mourning and just the realization and how Jamie must feel after all this has happened. Have a good day, boys.